Hey everyone, today we're going to be taking a look at Kiki Pod for this week's deck primer, and it's kind of a complicated deck, so I guess I'm just going to start off by explaining the combos, because it's a combo mid-range hybrid, and the mid-range part's pretty easy to understand. You just beat down with like Voice and Kitchen Finks and Resto Angel, but there's a lot of different combos, so can go ahead and explain those. The reason it's called Kiki Pod is because we are a birthing pod deck, but Kiki-Jiki the Mirror Breaker is a very important aspect of our deck in particular. And you can go ahead and read it there. It puts a copy of something in play. That's ours. And it's a little hard to cast. It is triple red, which means our mana base isn't exactly perfect, but it combos with a bunch of different cards. Some of these combos are actually in other decks. The first one is that you combo Kiki with Deceiver Exarch. When Exarch comes into play, you untap something you control. So you just Kiki, make a copy of your Exarch, use Exarch to untap your Kiki, and then make infinite copies of Exarch and attack them for infinite damage. Likewise, similar thing exists with Resto Angel. Resto Angel blinks something when it comes into play, so you Kiki, copy your Resto, blink your Kiki, copy your Resto again, make infinite Resto tokens and kill them. And works pretty much the same way with Zealous Conscripts, because Conscripts is mainly used to, of course, gain control of something your opponent has and attack with it, but in this case, one of the main uses is just untapping our Kiki and making infinite copies of Zealous Conscripts and hitting them for infinite. Those are the basic combos. They're of course all 2-card combos, but a lot of them are searchable with Birthing Pod. I'll kind of get to that later. Something that people often ask me is, well, why Kiki Pod? Why not one of the other Birthing Pod decks? They're two other. I mean, they're kind of one, but they have like subcategories. The two main kinds of pod decks right now is there's Kiki Pod, and I'm gonna call the other one Junk Pod because it's junk colors. It is white, green, black. And then among the Junk Pod decks, those subdivide into two different categories. One that uses the Malaria combo with Viscera Seer and Kitchen Finks for infinite life or Redcap for infinite damage. And then there's a different one, same colors but different combo, where it plays Archangel of Thune and Spike Feeder to gain infinite life and put infinite +1/+1 counters on your guys. There are also some variants that will play both of those in one. The reason why I am playing this one is I like it better. That's that's what it comes down to, really. But I like it better because this deck is it has easier access to its combos. The Malaria combo is a 3-card combo, and the Archangel of Thune Spike Feeder combo is a little easier to get to, but it's not quite as easy as these combos, and I will explain why, because I often like to refer to this deck as a 1-card combo deck. It's not technically a 1-card combo deck, but it's often the case that if you just get to untap with Birthing Pod and just creatures, it doesn't really matter what the creatures are, but if you untap with Birthing Pod and some number of creatures, you can usually just find a way to put infinite damage on the table. And that's something that I like about this deck. I think it abuses the card Birthing Pod a lot more in particular. And this deck does have a pretty good grind game too. One thing that people often say about why the other pod deck is better is that it has a better grind game or a better, attrition game or whatever. And I actually don't think that's necessarily true. I think the main advantage to playing the other deck is that you get to play black. And black has some really good cards right now. The main two being Thoughtseize and Abrupt Decay. So if you want to play Thoughtseize and Abrupt Decay, I definitely couldn't fault you for playing that deck. Both of these decks are very powerful decks. It just comes down to which cards and which colors you like better. So the main reason that I like this, as far as how the combos work, say you have a Birthing Pod in play and you have a 2-drop and a 1-drop in play. It doesn't matter. Say you have a Spellskite and a Noble Hierarch and a Birthing Pod. Well, that's actually infinite damage, and it might not seem like it, but you would use Birthing Pod to sacrifice your 2-drop, get Deceiver Exarch, and untap your Birthing Pod. That's kind of one of the broken interactions, I guess, that this deck has, is that you can get Deceiver Exarch and untap your pod and then use it again. So you can use Birthing Pod, something like 5 times in one turn, depending on how the turn goes, which is something the other pod variant can't do. you get Exarch, you untap your Birthing Pod, then you use Birthing Pod, sack your 1-drop, get Phantasmal Image, copy Deceiver Exarch, and untap your Birthing Pod again. Then use Birthing Pod, sacrificing your Phantasmal Image. That's a copy of a Deceiver Exarch, so it's actually converted mana cost 3. You sacrifice your Phantasmal Image, get Restoration Angel, blink your Deceiver Exarch, which untaps your Birthing Pod again, then sacrifice Restoration Angel, get Kiki-Jiki, and then that's infinite damage. There are a lot of other different ways to do the combo as well. One of the most simple ones and easiest to do is that if you just have a Birthing Pod and one of your 4-drop persist creatures in play, you just sacrifice one of those, get Zealous Conscripts, untap your Birthing Pod, the creature persists back, then you sacrifice it again, get Kiki-Jiki, and deal infinite damage. So I'm not exaggerating when I say that the deck is often just Birthing Pod plus creatures equals infinite damage. So that's why I like it. And I actually played this deck at a not this exact list, but I played this deck at Grand Prix Richmond, which Kiki Pod actually won that event. And I plan on playing it again in a PTQ in roughly 2.5 weeks or something. So that's one reason that I'm profiling this deck, because I have played it and I particularly like it, and I'm going to play it again. Guess I'll get into the choices. Mana base is not that complicated. We got lots of different lands, but we have one of every single shock land in our 4-color combination. And then we have 7 fetches. We have 3 Misty Rainforest and 3 Arid Mesa. Then we have 4 Grove of the Burnwillows. We're playing it not because we desperately need red-green, although we do. Red and green are probably the 2 most important colors in our deck. But we're mainly playing it because it doesn't cost us any life. They gain a life, but we're not very concerned with their life total if we're just going to deal them infinite damage anyway. So that's why we're playing that. Then we just got the lone Razorverge Thicket. We're also playing one of Rugged Prairie, because all of our double-colored spells in our deck are either red or white. We have this Fiend Hunter, this Linvala, and then Kiki, Redcap, and this is, kind of also double white. Then we've got 2 basics. We got a Forest and a Plains, and last but not least, we've got Gavony Township, which is one of our main late-game cards. If things come down to an attrition battle, we can just sort of make our guys bigger and attack them with them. It's also very good with persist creatures. So that's the mana base. Also, very closely related to the mana base is we are playing 4 Noble Hierarch, 4 Birds of Paradise. And some of these decks will only play like 3 or 2 Noble Hierarchs. I personally go with the full 4, just because I value Temple a lot. I really want to have a 1-drop, and I would love to play something that costs 3 mana on turn 2. So that's why we're going with that. Another reason is that we're playing Domri Rade, which I'll get to in a bit, but casting Domri Rade on turn 2 is pretty awesome. So we're playing the full 8. I'd definitely not consider cutting back on those. I know Noble Hierarch is a little pricey, but I think it's very important. Moving on to 2 drops, we've got 2 Wall of Roots. It is the next best ramp card after Birds and Hierarchs. We're playing those, and 5 walls are pretty good. I mean, they block a lot, even most Termaglyphs, so pretty strong. We've got Scavenging Ooze, one of our silver bullets in our deck. Scavenging Ooze is actually quite good right now. There's a lot of Snapcasters, there's a lot of Lingering Souls. There are even a few graveyard-based decks like Living End and even Storm, because they play like Past in Flames and Pyromancer's Ascension. We've got Phantasmal Image. I kind of already explained why it goes with some of our combos, but it's also a pretty good card in general. Sometimes, you're playing against Tron and they make a Wormcoil Engine, and then you just pot away your 1-drop for Phantasmal and just match their Wormcoil Engine. And we've got 1 Qasali Pridemage as another silver bullet. It's pretty good in the field right now. It's good against Splinter Twin. It's good against Affinity. Good against Tron even. It's good against a lot right now. Then we've got 3 Voice of Resurgence. Just a very strong card in the meta right now. It can often get very big because we're playing a lot of guys. By that I mean the tokens can get very big. And it's also very good against the decks with a lot of instant speed effects. Things like Control, Splinter Twin, even Scapeshift plays a few instant speed effects. Then we've got Spellskite for another Silver Bullet, mainly against Splinter Twin, Infect, even Burn, and I guess also the Boggles deck, the enchantment-based deck. 3-drops are probably going to need some explanation. We're playing 2 Kitchen Finks. Kitchen Finks isn't as good as it used to be with all of the Scavenging Oozes in the meta right now, but it's still pretty good. One of the things that I like to do with this deck in attrition battles is that I will pod away my Kitchen Finks, get Restoration Angel, and then blink my Kitchen Finks and reset it. And then I can keep doing the same thing next turn by potting off the Finks, getting another Angel, and so on and so forth. Not quite as good as it used to be, but I still really like it. Of course, you got 1 Deceiver Exarch because it's part of our combo. Some decks will play 2 Exarchs. I was actually playing 2 Exarchs before, but I wanted to make room for other things, and I noticed other people were only playing 1 copy, so I figured I would try it myself. I think 1 copy should be good enough. Then we've got these 2 guys, Izzet Staticaster and Fiend Hunter. It's pretty common to play Izzet Staticaster. It's good against a lot of the field right now. There's a lot of Dark Confidants, a lot of Lingering Souls. Good against Affinity, of course. Kills those Memnites and Signopests. Pretty good even against like Splinter Twin. Kills Pestermite, Snapcaster Mage, and Grim Lavamancer. Good against a lot of things. But Fiend Hunter is an idea I got because, well, there's a couple of reasons. One being that I wanted to have an out in my deck to this guy here, Linvala. This is something that's played in pretty much every Birthing Pod deck, and it's one of the better cards in the Birthing Pod mirrors, because if our opponent hasn't played, it means we can't activate our Kiki, we can't activate like even our Qasali Pridemage or Scavenging Ooze, we can't activate any of our Mana Dorks, can't even activate Spellskite, can't activate Staticaster. You get the idea. Linvala kind of shuts off our deck. So I wanted to be able to just pod something that just gets rid of it. And Fiend Hunter, I think, is the best card for that job. It's, of course, a triggered ability, not an activated ability, so Linvala won't stop it. And it also has 3 toughness, which means it doesn't die to Murderous Redcap, which is really good for us, too. Then we have Domri Rade. Most people would just play Chord of Calling in this slot. I had Domri Raids, went to Chord of Calling. Chord of Calling didn't work, so I went back to Domri Rade. I mean, I don't think one card is strictly better than the other, but I noticed there's like a lot of like Splinter Twin with things like Lightning Bolt and Grim Lavamancer, and there's like a lot of junk decks with, and Jund with a bunch of different removal, and against the decks with lots of removal, I think Domri Rade's better than Chord, because if they just kill your guys, Chord is just a pretty crappy card. It would take a lot to get going. Whereas Domri Rade, we can just cast it on 2 and just start ticking it up. It ticks up to 4 right away, which is nice because it means they can't kill it with Lightning Bolt. Basically, if you start on the play and you start turn 1 Mana Dork, turn 2 Domri Rade, it's just very hard to lose. In my opinion, at any rate. Then moving on, we got 3 Resto Angels. Some lists will even play 4, and it's a very good card. And of course, combos with our Kiki. It can blink Kitchen Finks or Archmage or Redcap for the reset. We can even blink Wall of Roots to reset the counters. We can blink Izzet Staticaster to deal 2 to something. Of course, blinking Exarch is pretty key. Even blinking Fiend Hunter is potentially a thing. Very good card, Restoration Angel. I like the fact that in this deck, you can just pass with a bunch of mana up, and they don't know what to expect. They don't know whether you have an Exarch or a Staticaster or a Resto or even a Chord of Calling, because, of course, most lists are playing that. Resto is... Oh, and you can also blink Conscripts. I can't believe I forgot to mention that. That's quite relevant. Then, got Linvala, as I said. Shuts down actually a lot of decks, to be honest. Also pretty reasonable against Affinity. They can't activate their Arcbound Ravager or their Steel Overseer or what have you. Then we've got Glen Elendra. As I stated, the 4-drop Persist creatures are kind of important to some of our combos, but it's also good against just the Splinter Twin and control decks, you know, things like Scapeshift, even pretty good against Tron. Sometimes you just pot it and you're like, well, I have 2 counter spells, you can't beat me, which is pretty cool. Birthing Pot, of course, needs no explanation. It is kind of the heart and soul of the deck. Then we've got Redcap, pretty good persist creature again. Dealing 2 to something is pretty nice. Kills a few different creatures in the format. Then we've got our 2 Kikis, the namesake of the deck, and we've got our 1 Conscripts. Can often steal a big thing the opponent has and kill them with it, or of course combos with Kiki. Moving on to the sideboard. Wasn't too sure what I wanted to do with this sideboard. Sideboarding with these decks are actually pretty hard, I find, because you have so many different possibilities. We're of course a 4-color deck, but we've got 2 Path to Exile. A lot of the sideboard is just a bunch of other different bullets that weren't good enough to make the main, like Kataki War's Wage. Quite good against Affinity, of course. We've got a couple of negates here. We've got just a random Combust against Splinter Twin. The second Ooze didn't have room in the main deck for it, but definitely comes in sometimes. The 4th Voice, I really like Voice a lot, so the decks like Control, I really want to have the 4th one. You could argue that 3 is already enough, but against the decks where it's good, I feel you can never have too many voices. Then we've got second Spellskite. Against Splinter Twin specifically, I wanted to be able to pot up another Spellskite if I wanted to. Then Aven Mindcensor, very good against Pod, very good against Tron, very good against Scapeshift. Almost good enough to make the main deck actually, but not quite. It's very abysmal against Affinity and not particularly good against the mid-range decks either. But probably one of the best cards on our sideboard, I would say. Then we've got this Eidolon of Rhetoric here. It's kind of the new Aethersworn Canonist. It doesn't die to Lightning Bolt, and it doesn't die to Ancient Grudge, so it's definitely better than Aethersworn Canonist. And Storm and Living End aren't really that popular anymore, I've found. But I think just cutting this card from the board would be a little too greedy. On the off chance that, you know, you do face one of those decks in your 9th-round PTQ or whatever, you'd want to have it. Harmonic Sliver, pretty good against Affinity, I guess. Nice thing about it, too, is that unlike Qasali Pridemage, you can just blink it with your Restoration Angel and keep killing more things. So pretty good there. We've got 1 Fiery Justice. This is a card that I've actually started liking more and more. I might even go up to the 2nd copy. It's very good against just the creature decks in the format. Decks like other pod decks, the mid-range decks. It's, of course, an answer to Linvala, as I was discussing before. So I really like this card. I would consider going up to the 2nd copy. We've got Avalanche Riders, basically just a concession to the fact that Tron and Scapeshift are getting more popular online, both online and real life, actually. So just wanted to have something to kill land. Another thing, of course, we can blink with our Resto. And last but not least, we have Sigarda, Host of Herons. That's my answer to all of the mid-range decks that have been popping up. So on that note, I think I'm going to wrap up this profile. Alan Pennington with Gathering Magic. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy the rounds.